Everybody, today in DSP we will discuss about the introduction of a signal and outlines are what is signal, what is processing, then necessity of a signal processing. So, what is signal? The signal is any physical quantity which gives or which varies with respect to time and space or any other independent variables. So, signal, suppose I am clapping, that's a signal. Suppose I am waving a hand, that is signal. So that means anything which is varies with respect to time, space and the other independent variables, and it gives some information to you. So in electronics point of view, we can also say a signal is an electromagnetic or electrical current that carries data from one system or network to another system or network. So that is also called as a, in definition, that is also called as a digital signal or signal. Mathematically, we describe the signal as a function of one or more independent variable. Like example, s of t equal to 5t. And even if that signal also, that example very simplest one. Also you can say s of t is 5t plus 3t square plus 3 minus 5t cube. That can be also a signal. Then what is processing? So processing means an operation is being done on a signal. Operation what? That operation can be mathematical operation, integration and logical operation. Any operation is whenever it is done on a signal, that is called as a processing. That process whole phenomenon is called as a processing. But whenever the device which is doing the processing is called as a processor. So depending upon the device, it can be analog processor or a digital processor. But processing क्या है? Now processing means operation which is carried out on the signal by the system is called as a signal processing. सिग्नल को प्रोसेसिंग किया जाता है, मतलब कि सिग्नल को कंडीशनिंग किया जाता है और इट इज डन, कंडीशनिंग इज डन in order to achieve something, in order to extract something. Whenever processing main aim is the aim of the processing is that to achieve something or to extract something data from that signal is called as a processing. The operation performed on a signal consists of a number of mathematical operations as specified by the software program. That means what? Now, ये जो operation होता है, that operation may be like amplification is also processing. In analog cases, you must have read a number of processing. Filtration is also processing on a signal. So, every operation have some meaning and have some aim. Then after necessity of a signal processing मैंने बता रहा था, I am saying all of you that signal processing, why we need signal processing? Now because we want to extract some necessity information from that signal, and we want to achieve some necessary information from that signal. So that's why we go for the processing. So signal processing is required to facilitate automatic speech recognition. स्पीच रिकॉग्नाइजेशन के लिए भी सिग्नल का प्रोसेसिंग होना बहुत जरूरी है, बिकॉज बाय प्रोसेसिंग इट वी नो दैट ऑल द थिंग्स कैन बी अचीव्ड. Signal processing allows engineers, scientists to analyze, optimize, and correct signals, including scientific data, audio streams, all these things. So that means signal agar processing if you do processing, so our engineers and the scientists can find out some data. I have already mentioned that in order to extract some data or extract some valuable data, so signal को processing करना, analyze किया जाता है and optimize also. Optimize means we can process, when we process the process a signal, we can use it in various ways. So that is called optimize, including scientific data, audio stream, images and video. All these things needs processing. सिग्नल प्रोसेसिंग इज अप्लाइड अक्रॉस मेनी इंडस्ट्रीज, बहुत सारा इंडस्ट्री के ऊपर वो काम करता है, इंक्लूडिंग एक्वास्टिक मॉडल टेस्टिंग, स्ट्रक्चर मॉडल टेस्टिंग. सिग्नल प्रोसेसिंग बहुत सारा एप्लीकेशन है. देन व्हाट इज बेसिक एलिमेंट्स ऑफ डिजिटल सिग्नल प्रोसेसिंग? बेसिक एलिमेंट्स क्या है सिग्नल प्रोसेसिंग करने के लिए? व्हाट आर द बेसिक एलिमेंट्स? बेसिक एलिमेंट क्या है? Now most of the signal encounter science and engineering are analog in nature. बहुत सारा जो हम लोग जितने सारे सिग्नल नेचर से मिलता है हम लोग को, वी आर गेटिंग फ्रॉम द नेचर, दीज आर द सिग्नल्स व्हिच आर in nature or by nature it is analogous in nature. Suppose kahin pe suppose somewhere is there is a music sound is coming, that is analog in nature, but digital and signal never comes from the nature. It has to be processed and it has to be prepared. That is, signals are a function of a continuous variable such as time or space. Signals, natural signals जितने सारे all the natural signals are analog in nature, analogous in nature. So continuous such signals are processed directly by appropriate analog system. ये जो signal है, जो natural से signal है, analog signal है, that is has to be processed by directly by a analog systems. डिजिटल सिग्नल प्रोसेसिंग प्रोवाइड्स एन ऑल्टरनेटिव मेथड प्रोसेसिंग करने के लिए. एनालॉग प्रोसेसिंग जिस तरह एम्पलीफायर है, ट्रांजिस्टर है, एम्पलीफाइंग एक्शन देता है, वो एक एनालॉग प्रोसेसर है. बट व्हेनेवर वी विल गो फॉर द डिजिटल प्रोसेसर्स, so digital processor is a alternative method of processing. Analog processor, some lacuna are there in analog processing. Digital processing is fulfilling that lacuna or fulfilling that gap. Then basic elements of a digital signal processing क्या है ना, analog to digital converter, digital signal processor, then digital to analog converter. Very beginning I have said all the signals and most of the signals in nature happening, almost all signals are analogous in nature. So if analogous in nature, so human is capable of understanding the analog signal. Human being is capable of understanding the analog in nature. So that's why whenever we will process in digitally, so there is no input signal digitally present in by nature. So that's why we have to what? Now, in order to implement a digital processor, we have to give it a digital signal. So where we get the digital signal? Now it has to be converted from its analog counterpart. Analog signal से उसको convert करना पड़ेगा. That's why we need a analog to digital converter. The analog to digital converter first of all will convert the data into digital form. That analog signal will be converted as it is present. As it is present, it is converted to digital. Then only digital signal processor can process the data. उसके ऊपर many operations we can do. Suppose amplification in digitally, filtration in digitally, integration, differentiation, addition, multiplication. So many processing can be done by the digital signal processor. In general, we are saying it is processor. If specific operation will be done by this digital signal processor, suppose it will go for the addition process, then that processor will be called as a RR. If it will go for the integration process, suppose a digital signal only comes through a integration process, that processor will be called as a integrator. If it will be go for differentiation, then it will be differentiator. But in general, we are saying it is digital signal processors. So analog to digital conversion, then after digital signal processor will process it, but that processed data or processed signal has to be converted, must have to be converted to digital to analog, because now in nature or by nature outside industry में, suppose we cannot understand, human being cannot understand the digital data by listening it, so it has to convert, again has to be converted to the analog counterpart. Analog, whenever it will be converted to our analog signal, then only we can understand data. That's why an DAC is required. So minimum element क्या है ना, DAC also will be required. So digital to analog converter. So that means the basic component of a digital signal processing what? Na analog to digital converter, ADC and DAC, and in between that processor, digital signal processor. These are the basic elements of a digital signal processing. In the next part, I described it, what I have said now described with the diagram. These are the descriptions. It is written that ADC, it is the interface between analog signal and the digital signal processor. But in between, then it converts analog to signal to digital data. Yes. Then digital signal processor क्या कर रहा है? What it is doing? Now it is nothing only a programmable microprocessor programmed to perform the desired operation on the inputted signal. Though inputted signal है, it is there is a definite instructions like I have gave the example adder, multiplication or integration. All these things it will do. Now basic elements of yes, the digital signal processor may be large programmable digital computer or small microprocessor. जो digital signal processor ये इतना बड़ा कंप्यूटर भी हो सकता है, एक माइक्रो प्रोसेसर होता है जो which is specifically program and also can be called as a microcontroller. It may also be hardware digital processor configured to perform a specified set of operation, which we are calling at is the microcontroller in the very comfortable way. DAC is in the last part is the DAC, digital to analog converter. It is the interface between processed digital data and output analog data. DAC वही करता है, क्या करता है ना, यो इनपुट जो लेता है प्रोसेसर से इनपुट लेता है, बट आउटपुट इट गिव्स. Then advantage of digital signal processing over analog signal processing. So analog signal processing के ऊपर बहुत सारा एडवांटेज है डिजिटल का. डिजिटल का मेन तो एडवांटेज क्या है ना, ये हायर एक्यूरेसी ओवर एनालॉग प्रोसेसर. एनालॉग प्रोसेसर के ऊपर बहुत हाई एक्यूरेसी आता है. डिजिटल सिग्नल प्रोसेसर cheaper than analog signal processor because digital signal or mass production happens, but in case of an analog signal processor mass production cannot happen, so that's why it is very cheap in nature. And also DSP जो है वो reconfiguration can be done, but in case of analog there will be no reconfiguration is possible in ASP. And DSP can be interfaced with another data. ये parallelly हो, cascade हो और cascode connection हो, वो it is can be interfaced. But in case of ASP, very loading effects and so many effects and so many problems it faces whenever it is connected one after another. DSP can be cascaded without the mass production of a DSP is done easily, but in case of mass production cannot be. DSP uses less bandwidth than the ASP requires. Its disadvantage यही है कि analog signal processor का it needs a larger bandwidth in order to operate. These are the advantages. Then classification of a signal. Signal का बहुत सारा classification है. The digital signal can be classified into various ways. Multi-channel signal, multi-dimensional signal. Later we will read in one by one. Continuous time signal and a discrete time signal, continuous valued signal and a discrete valued signal. Thank you.